This is Chicago Tonight, Tuesday, June 2nd, 1998.
Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Brackett, sitting in for John Calloway. Welcome to Chicago Tonight. It's been 3 years since Paul Vallas took over as CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. As this school year comes to a close, what kind of a grade should the school's chief get? Test scores are up slightly for the third year in a row, but dropout rates remain high. Magnet schools compete with top private and suburban schools, but parents are furious about a new busing scheme. The plan would put some kids on street corners at 6:30 a.m. to wait for their buses. How are the schools doing that were on probation, or those in reconstitution? And what about the new charter schools? Paul Vallas is here to answer those questions. But first, Chicago Tonight correspondent Rich Samuels takes a look at one school and its reaction to the new busing plan.
It was on May 21st that the kids, staff, and parents here at Pritzker School learned that their starting time next year would be rolled back to 8 a.m., their dismissal to 1:30. Part of a plan to allow one set of buses to serve a pair of schools.
One of the schools would start earlier, and the second school on the second tier would start 90 minutes later. And that gives the same bus an opportunity to pick up two sets of children and to transport them to two individual schools. And then the same thing occurs in the afternoon.
Yonder comes day, day is a breakin'. So saying Pritzker students recently as their parents complained their kids next year would be at a bus stop before daybreak.
My son will be waiting for the bus at 6:30. His ride is an hour long. He'll be standing in the dark.
Is that in anyone's best interest? And especially in the cold, in the dark, in the snow.
It's a terrible idea for working parents and anyone who's a parent at home. I have another child who may be going into a magnet school. Her hours could be completely different, so I'll have two different work shifts to deal with in terms of getting them back and forth from school. It's an impossible situation. It's going to increase my child care costs tremendously.
It may be efficient to the CEOs, but it's not going to work for moms and dads.
And so, to pare down its $100 million annual bus budget, the board took action.
This year we're seeking to cut $4.4 million.
I would say $4.4 million. When I think of that, that's one lawsuit for an injury to a kid at 6:15 in the morning would wipe out that $4.4 million in an instant.
If we didn't have the $4 million, we wouldn't have our Parents as Teachers First program. If we didn't have the $4 million, we wouldn't have our Bridging of the Gap program. If we didn't have the $4.4 million, we couldn't finance our Healthy Minds, Healthy Kids programs. Yes, it's a significant amount of money.
How might early start impact a typical family? We visit the home of Nancy Wade. Her son Eli enters 4th grade at Pritzker next year. Her son Nathan enters 1st grade at Franklin. Life next year will be different.
Right now we get up at 7 o'clock in order to catch, for the little one, a bus that comes at 7:45, and for Eli, a bus that comes at 8 o'clock. If the day is moved back an hour and a half, we'd be getting up at 5:30. And I don't know how I'm going to do that.
You're not aware that there's been a certain amount of vocal reaction against this plan?
Oh, we're absolutely aware. Absolutely.
Did you anticipate that?
Yes, we did. But dialogue is helpful, and dialogue stimulates conversation.
The board says affected schools can maintain the status quo as long as they come up with alternative plans that system-wide save $4.4 million.
A school might choose to use some of their own discretionary money to finance the savings end. A school might choose to charge fees, or a school might come up with an option that's unique to them.
The option presented to Pritzker last Friday lopped $90,000 from busing costs here and keep the current schedule. This afternoon, Pritzker administrators agreed to eliminate 3 bus runs next year, thus saving its 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. school day. For Chicago Tonight, this is Rich Samuels.
And now joining us is the Chief Operating Officer of the Public Schools, Paul Vallas. Welcome to Chicago Tonight.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, as you can see in that report, parents and principals are seemingly mighty upset about this busing plan.
Well, if you're going to balance a budget, you have to make tough decisions. And what I'm looking at doing to keep this budget balanced and to be able to sustain the programs that we've enacted that are really making a difference in the schools is to eliminate things that do not impact on the classroom. And transportation costs, $100 million in transportation costs, is investing money in the busing companies and not investing money in the classroom.
But I understand from last year's budget there was $159 million from last year that you can utilize in this year's budget, and it's a big budget. I mean, it's a $3.4 billion budget. So the $4.4 million, while it seems like a lot of money, isn't really a lot for the impact it seems to have on people's lives.
Well, you know, first of all, if you're talking about a half-an-hour adjustment in a school schedule or a 45-minute adjustment in a school schedule in order to save $4.5 million and eventually $20 million, that is a big impact.
That is a big impact on the families, are you saying, or on the budget? I mean, when you say a half an hour, now look at it realistically. I mean, if your child has to be there at 7:30, I mean, that for a little child, that is a big adjustment. They do have to get up at 5:30. I mean, the question, but the question is...
Major cities across this nation bus. Major cities across this schools in the suburbs do bus pairing. Major cities do bus pairing. Schools have been doing bus pairing for years. The bottom line is, what would you rather have us eliminate? Would you rather have us eliminate the summer school program? That's making a difference. Would you rather us end the Lighthouse program?
But are you telling me there is not enough money in this $3.4 billion budget that you have to have that $4.4 million or that $20 million eliminated from transportation costs in order to save the other programs? Is that the only way you can do it? I mean, you're the budget genius.
Right.
You've done this very well.
First of all, the way you balance budgets is you take $2 million here, $5 million here, $6 million here, $3 million here. Our transportation budget has got to be reduced by $20 million, or we're going to have to begin to cut into education programs.